Hello everybody, I'm Serti and we're back in Astro Colony, and I've had a couple of questions regarding blocks and signals. So we're going to do a quick episode on blocks and signals just to get an understanding of how they work and how they might be applied. So let's start with this little section here. Okay, so the first block that we have is the filter. Now in this box I have nothing right now, but I'm currently blocking everything except I'm filtering out uranium. Well, I'm not going to be putting uranium in here because I don't have any, but I put that there because, specifically because I'm not putting it in there. So we'll load up this. Oops, not with that. Okay. So now, as a result of only uranium being filtered, there's nothing coming out because there's no uranium in here. If there was, uranium would be coming out right now. I've got a second block here. This is a pusher. Now the pusher will take a product and push it in a direction. Right now I have that set to copper ore, and what will happen here is the copper ore will just pretty much circulate. Okay. The next is the splitter. Now bear in mind, all of these blocks, you can choose the resources. So for example, if you hover over the block and you press E, you can then select a resource. Now in this case, filtering only uranium ore. In this case, pushing only copper ore. So the copper ore is heading off and coming back around. Here I'm splitting everything. So I haven't chosen any resources, so everything that comes in is going to be split. Bear in mind also that you can split, and if you've been watching the other episodes, you'll notice I've used this quite a bit, is you can decide how much is going to go in each direction. At the moment, this is all splitting equally, so one will go straight, one will go left, one will go right, one will go straight, and so on. And then we have a blocker. What I've done here is I've set it to block carbon, which means that carbon will not be split in this direction. And you can use this. I wouldn't use this if there isn't an alternate route. Okay, so if you put a blocker in, you need to make sure that there's an alternate route for whatever you're blocking. Otherwise, it'll get backed up. The same goes with the filter. If you put the filter one block over, away from the output of wherever you put it, it could be on a storage, it could be on a machine, it could be on one of these joints, you're going to cause a problem because one of the products that is not filtered is going to come out and it's going to block everything else on the belt. So bear that in mind. So let's remove this block and see how this goes. Okay, so firstly, all the iron is coming out. The iron isn't prohibited in any way, so it's getting split and some of it's going into the box at the end. Now, if we let this run, eventually everything will come out. As you can see, this is carbon. Carbon is being blocked from going into the next container, so it's just circling around. Now, this may cause a problem because, yes, okay, so let's move that to the back of the queue. Okay, now we'll have the rest of the iron come out. And there comes the copper, and the copper is all getting pushed back around. This isn't exactly a use case, but if you watch my previous episode with the efficient setup of the production line, you'll see how this can be used more efficiently. Okay, so now the copper is doing the same thing as what the coal did. So let's move the gold to the front of the queue, and the gold will then... This dude really needs to stop following me. Okay, so that's just going to carry on going until eventually everything is full. One more thing you should know is that all of these can be switched off, so they can all stop operating with what they're doing. So if I turn that one off and I put the carbon back in, now the carbon is going to split as per normal because this block is powered off. So yeah, let me empty this out and we'll move on to the next area. Okay, so we now move on to the next area, and this is with the transport tubes. Now, transport tubes are pretty much the same as belts, as long as they are put on a flat surface. And the blocks don't work, especially things like the splitter, don't really work the same as what they do on belts. So it's something that you're going to have to play with. But you can use blocks on the transport tubes in almost the same way as that you use them on the belts. But you cannot use the blocks, as I've found, on horizontal transport tubes. So because for whatever reason they don't work properly when you put a block on a belt that's going up. So yeah, that's one of those things. I don't know if it's going to be attended to in the future, but right now, yeah, don't even bother on the horizontals. All right, so the gold should come out because the gold is filtered. So when it eventually gets there, I should have just put the material straight in here. All right, here comes some gold, and the gold goes through. And as you can see, the gold is splitting, and that is eventually going to cause a little backup in this area, because I've also blocked the carbon from carrying on into the storage. Let's take that block off, and everything comes through. So as you can see, if the material on the splitter cannot go in a particular direction, then it just splits by the ratios that you have determined in the other two outputs. So yeah, that's the simple blocks. That would be the pusher, the blocker, the filter, and the splitter. Those are just the basic logistics blocks. Pretty easy to use, pretty easy to understand, good functionality, and very, very useful in building a good production line. So yeah, let's go and get some more carbon. Right, now we're going to move on to the signals. There are 3 signal blocks that you need to know about. The first is the inventory sensor, and that basically does exactly what it says. So if I was to go into this sensor, put a sensor down, click on it and say, okay, I want to find out how many carbons. Bear in mind, when you start this, you have to choose the target of the sensor. Okay, so you click on that, and then you are basically then standing on top of it, and you have to point at the item that you want to watch and click on it, and it will tell you how many of those. So we have 196 carbon in this container, which is exactly right. The same thing works for pretty much any machine. So I wanted this one to tell me how many oxygen tanks are in this oxygen generator, and it tells me that there are 20, which is exactly right, 20. All right, so that sorts that out. As we go further, let's take a look at, we'll take a look at this setup first. Then the next one you have is a decider, and that is this decider block here. The decider block tells you what to do. So you'll notice that there are ports on the sides of the signal blocks, and those are for signal cables, which you can find right there. In this case, I have a inventory sensor here telling me that there is no carbon ore in this. Based on that, if there's less than 5 carbon in the carbon reactor, I want this block to be switched on. Now, that is actually wrong. It should switch the block off. Okay, so I'm using a blocker. That just gives you an idea of what you can do. So you can decide whether it's less than, greater than, equal, less than equal, or not. I'm not sure what not is, but yeah. So what's happened now is that I've turned this block on because there were less than 5 in here. Okay, I didn't really want to do that, but that's fine. So we'll just grab that out of there because it has actually switched off again. All right, then we get to the arithmetic block. The arithmetic block has an input and output port. And right now, I need to disconnect. I think I need to disconnect. I don't really. Yeah, let me switch this one off. Okay, so I've got 2 arithmetic blocks. One sensing how much carbon is in this container, and one sensing how much carbon is in this machine. I know it's not exactly the right thing to do, but you can add them together, and this shows that there are now 75 in the system. There's 74 there, and there's 1 in the production. So if I drop some more in here, that carbon's going to get used slowly. So now it's telling me there's 161. And I can then plug that maths block into a decision block and make a decision on what happens where. So in this case, we can link it up to this block, and we can say if there are less than 10, we can open the block. So yeah, that would apply to mining, but that just gives you an idea that you can add two sensors together. You can multiply them, so you can have multiple machines and then just add a multiplier. And that should help you with the advanced blocks. So yeah, the maths one connects two sensor blocks, and you can do maths on those sensor blocks and make a decision based on that number. Now, it's a lot more involved than that. You can make some crazy systems, but you can also make simple systems, like what I think it was Peter or Doug or Mel mentioned in the comments, that you can actually use it to stop your oxygen production once you have reached a certain number of oxygen tanks, which is good because that will save power. So yeah, you could do the same thing with hydrogen. All right, so let's go to something a little bit more practical. And if we hop over this side, see a whole bunch of things happening. First thing, we haven't looked at these before, but this is an energy transmitter. And down there is an energy receiver. So I have no power cables coming across from my base into there, but I can transfer power. And if you go in, you can choose how much power is being sent across. Right now we have plenty, so I could send 100, it would be fine, but it's not using the full 100, it's just sending 100. Right, so there's one thing you need to remember on these. There seems to be a button missing, but if you look on the side here, select energy receiver. So if you want to, you have to target the energy receiver that you're sending energy to. So you would have to point at that, press F, and then you can aim it at the receiver that you want and click, and that does it. Right, so that's pretty simple. But that leads me into the next section. We have these these signal transmitters, the signal transmitter, and right, that's the receiver, that's the transmitter over there, and we can send signals a long way. So right now I've got a signal that is telling me how much copper ore is in this smelter, and it's sending that number back to here, and it's plugging into a maths block, and along with a miner that's connected to this decision block. Okay, well, let's look at this system. So we actually don't need this one. Okay, I'm going to delete this and hope it doesn't mess up the whole system, because I think I've got this doesn't actually need to be here. All right, because now we're getting that signal from over there. All right, so we have the signal coming in telling us how much copper ore is in the smelter, coming through here, going into this maths block. We also have the inventory sensor over here telling us how much copper ore we have in the inventory, and I'm going to take a little bit of that out for demonstration purposes. That goes into a maths block, which tells us, okay, we have 80 in total in the system between that smelter and this storage container. And then the decision on that would be, okay, so if we have less than 100, we need to switch this machine off. Right now I've switched it off manually, I think. So if I switch it back on, oh, you know what I did? This needs to be greater than 100 for it to switch off. Yes, okay. So once this entire system reaches 100, this machine should switch off. And it could take a short while, so let me speed that up a little bit. All right, should be coming soon, because we have 94. And there we go. Our miner has been switched off because we have enough in the system. Now, I could also, because I've got a filter block over here, I could switch this filter block off when that machine, for example, this smelter drops below a certain level. And that would release something out of the container, and you could make complete elaborate systems out of this using the sensors. And they are pretty handy in certain cases. I'm going to have to play around quite a lot to find proper use cases for them. Probably the water system would be the first, and maybe power systems using carbon reactors would be a very good place to use them as well, because you do need carbon for things other than power. So you could use those carbon reactors and have signals on them to stop sending carbon to the carbon reactors once there's quite a lot in them already. So yeah, that's just a quick one on sensors and logic blocks. I hope that's been helpful. We will continue to build the base, and in the next episode we're definitely going up to our black hole, so that should be interesting. And yeah, we are deep into the end game. But at this stage I've got everything set up pretty well in the factory, so I'm not going to go completely crazy on building a much bigger factory than what I have now. I don't see a need for it right now. Not getting enough material in, even with the, what have I got here, 20 catches to justify making it any bigger. All the machines are coping. So yeah, we'll leave it at that, and I will see you in the next one. If you like this video, give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, and give us a comment. I'm sure that there's something that I've missed. This was just an explainer from basically what I found on my own. Yeah, until next time, cheers.